Hi, this is Liv Morgan, and you are listening to No One Knows, a deep dive podcast into the mysterious death of Joann Matouk Romain. This podcast talks about suicide, murder, death, drugs, and sexual assault. Viewer discretion is advised. Today is February 1st, 2024, and you're about to help me play a role in uncovering the truth behind Joann Matouk Romain's sudden death. If you've come here for new evidence, buckle up. We're going to be sharing many details that have not been reported on, but before I begin, I have to take you back to 14 years ago and start at the beginning of the story. Our story starts in Grosse Pointe Farms and Grosse Pointe Woods. They are located along Lake St. Clair in the Detroit River, roughly 15 minutes from Detroit. I am taking you back to 2010. Joann Matouk Romain is a 55-year-old mom living in Grosse Pointe Woods. She spends a lot of her time with her three kids, Michelle, Kelly, and Michael, dining with friends, morning coffee dates. Joann's life seems pretty ordinary from the hours that I've spent talking with Michelle and Kelly. She frequently attended prayer service at St. Paul Catholic Church in Grosse Pointe Farms, running to the post office, and working at a local boutique a few times a month. She's a small-town mom. Her schedule is regular and her day-to-day life stays consistent. It was pretty easy to know what she was up to. She'd chat on the phone a lot. She stayed in contact with her kids, friends, and spoke with her brother, Joann Matouk, many times throughout the day. Let's go back a few months, before January 12th, 2010. That would be the date that would forever be imprinted on the family as Joann's disappearance. Go ahead and start at the beginning for me. Like I said, I want to hear from your words how all of this went down for you. And like I said, if you have to, you start wherever you feel like you need to. But if you want to start a few weeks before your mom's death.
Yeah, so I'm going to start from probably a few weeks before she disappeared.
Okay.
And it was right around New Year's. There was a huge, fight going on in the family, and right before New Year's hit, she had gotten a call probably a couple weeks prior from a cousin cop, who is Tim Matuk.
Yeah.
And I was in the same room as her. They exchanged words. She was screaming at him, and ultimately ended the call saying, "Leave me and my family alone, never call me again," and hung up.
Mm-hmm.
When I asked her what he had just said to her, she wouldn't tell me. She just literally turned to me and said, "If something happens to me, look to Tim." And I said, "What the hell? Like, why would you say something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Unless he just threatened you?" And she's like, "Don't worry about it, but if anything happened," and she just like left the living room, went back to the kitchen, and was like cooking. Like, that was her. And I just thought to myself, that was just like a really odd thing to say.
You heard that right? If something happens to me, look to Tim. It wouldn't be long after this phone call that Joann would end up missing. Tim Matuk. It's a name you're going to hear many times throughout this story. He's the biggest person of interest in this case, but not by his own Blue Line fellow officers, but by his own family. When Joann's family created a list of people that might want to harm Joann, Tim was at the top. And that phone call between Joann and Tim that Michelle recalls didn't make him look innocent. Joann and Tim are actually first cousins. Michelle will tell you throughout our interviews that Joann disliked Tim. It was almost as if this unspoken understanding through the family that Tim was corrupt, and they all somehow knew his law enforcement title let him get away with some sort of illegal activity. This wouldn't be the first time that Tim got away with some sort of illegal activity. During recorded depositions, Tim was accused of some awful crimes against someone who was a child at the time of the offense. Per the safety of this individual, we cannot share what those crimes look like. I am hopeful that in the near future, this person feels safe to come forward and share their story on their terms. It's been years since the crime occurred, but it's never too late to hold someone accountable. Kelly, Joann's second daughter, brought up an excellent point. An officer's salary doesn't add up to Tim's assets. I'm not talking a few extra $1,000 here and there. I am talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. To be exact, Tim is the owner of a $200,000 boat and a $460,000 home. I would be interested in seeing Tim's financial reports and where the money leads, unless it's somehow just cash deposits. Would it surprise you that Tim Matuk is currently working for the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office? In 2010, he was working with the Michigan State Narcotics Team. I want you to note and keep that in the back of your head. In 2010, he was working with the Michigan State Narcotics Police Force. I'm drawing our first connection. A cop, lots of shiny assets, narcotics team. Possible money laundering? How would Tim turn dirty money into clean money without it connecting to him and his job? Could he be responsible for paying off others on the task force? In multiple conversations with Michelle, she explains that her mom seemed threatened by Tim Matuk, but didn't tell her children in detail what was going on. She was almost in fear of what could happen if she was to tell them. After the phone call with Tim, Joann decided she would try and talk to her brother Bill Matuk about the situation. This would end up being an unannounced visit that would further change the course of all the suspicions of Tim and Bill. Bill Matuk is Joann's brother. He is currently the owner of Woods Wholesale Wine in Grosse Pointe Woods and was the owner back in 2010 as well. The wine business was started by Joann and Bill's parents. Upon their passing, Bill took over the family store and it still runs to this day with his sister Rosemary. Are you ready for connection number 2? We have Tim and Bill as first cousins. Tim is a cop and Bill runs a wine store. From speaking with Scott Lewis, the private investigator that was hired by the family, it was brought to my attention that Bill's store was an all-cash store. I mean, this isn't totally odd. This could make sense, all that's going on, especially if you're looking at Tim's assets as a police officer and working in law enforcement. Are you following what I'm saying? Are you ready for another connection? Let's just say, hypothetically, Tim works with the narcotics task force. What's to say he's not a dirty cop? He's getting paid by drug dealers. Maybe he's helping facilitate some sort of drug dealing without anyone getting caught, letting dealers get away with certain crimes in exchange for money. Like I said, this is all hypothetical. Or what if Bill and Tim are at the heart of it all? The more I speak with the family and reading through court depositions, I'm beginning more and more to question the finances of Tim. Seems more likely this could be happening or at some point did happen. What makes me think this, though? During recorded depositions, Bill Matuk's cell phone contained a number of phone numbers that would then be linked to detectives, officers, and investigators from Grosse Pointe Woods and Grosse Pointe Farms, which came to light during only the depositions. I am going to read you a line through the deposition during the interview with Bill Matuk. The question is asked. I want to ask you if you know some of the defendants in this case. Bill Matuk says, okay. Quote, do you know Daniel Jensen, the chief? Answer, yes. Question, how well do you know him? Answer, just as a customer, not socially. Question, so do you consider yourself to be friends with him? Answer, yeah, we're friendly. I mean, I will see him in the store if he is purchasing wine, or I may see him out in Grosse Pointe, in the area, or at some type of charity function. Question, would you consider yourselves to be buddies? Answer, like I said, I see him, we don't socialize. Question, would you consider yourself? Answer, we are friendly, yes. Question, I am asking the word buddy specifically. Do you Answer, buddies, no. My buddies I go out to dinner with. So to summarize, according to Bill Matuk, these were casual encounters. He didn't speak with these people, but at some point or another, they had shopped at Woods Wine. Odd. I own a business and don't have detective phone numbers in my phone, but what do I know? For me, this is a clear connection between law enforcement and the Matuk family, which should have been a red flag from the start of the investigation. Now that we have identified Tim and Bill and how they fit into this story, this is Michelle's recollection of Joann going unannounced to Bill's wine store to talk with him about the phone call that she had received from Tim Matuk.
She, told him that she wanted to come and talk to him. And, I don't know, how that whole conversation went, but she wanted to go physically to the store. So I was driving with her one day, and she said, just take me over to the store. I'm going to go, talk to him, basically unannounced visit. And I parked in the front. She went up to, upstairs at the liquor store, and she came down probably not even 10 minutes later, and it looked like she saw a ghost. And I was like, what happened? What did he say to you? And she was like, I don't want to talk about it. Just take me to church. I need to pray.
As mentioned before, Joann was strong in her faith. The family truly believes that Joann walked in on something that night at the wine store that she shouldn't have, and her fate would have been decided because of that event. Fast forward to the days leading up to Joann's disappearance. We are now at the 6th of January in 2010. It is 3:39 p.m. Joann contacted a security company by phone. Joann's phone records have pinpointed this phone call. Law enforcement handling the case will chalk this up to another example of Joann being paranoid. But does this further show you how scared Joann was for her and her family's safety just days after she had spoke with Bill at the wine store? During January 7th and 8th, 2010, Joann began receiving more phone calls than usual. She made it a point to step out of the room to take the calls privately and did not speak near her children when taking these phone calls. Joann began mentioning to her children, friends, and therapists that she was feeling followed. When driving, she would notice vehicles following in her rearview mirror. She believed her mail was being intercepted and tampered with. She began hearing clicks on her phone, insinuating that her calls were being tapped. Fast forward to January 12th, 2010, the night that Joann goes missing. The morning of the 12th started off early around 4:30 a.m. Michelle tells me that the morning was spent getting ready. They were headed to court. The court hearing was in regards to mold that was in their childhood home at the faults of the builders. This has been 7 years in the making. Joann and Michelle spent the morning getting ready together in the same room. Michelle recalls her mom's body did not show any signs of bruising, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. 7:15 a.m., the family would divide into 2 vehicles to drive themselves to Detroit. During the trip to court, Joann was with her 3 children when David Romain, Joann's soon-to-be ex-husband, drove himself. Upon arriving at 7:45 a.m., the family was in the courtroom by 8. The court lasted until lunch, and during lunch, the family sat together with attorneys to discuss details of the case while eating. As soon as lunch was over, the court resumed until around 4:30 p.m. After that, the family left for home at 5. Both Michelle and her father David stayed behind to prepare themselves for court the next day since they would be testifying first. On the way home, Kelly drove the other vehicle, taking the freeway and stopping at Starbucks on the way. Joann and her son Michael drove from Detroit to their home in Grosse Pointe Woods, taking Jefferson the entire way. This is where timeline is going to be important. At any point, if you become confused, please refer back to our No One Knows pod on Instagram for a timeline of events to visually see. At 6 p.m., Coast Guard records indicate they received a call about a missing woman. This is important to remember. At 6 p.m., Coast Guard records indicate that they received a call about a woman missing. At 6:15 p.m., Joann is seen on security footage at a local gas station. She had received full-service gas from an attendant. Here is the exact quote from court records obtained by the family. Quote, On January 12, 2010 at 6:25 p.m., I, Mohammed Beydoun, serviced Joann Matouk by pumping gas into her vehicle. While doing this, I did not notice anything suspicious in regards to her action. She seemed very calm and collected mood, with no signs of emotional distress. If there are any further questions or concerns, feel free to give me a call." End quote. From there, Joann heads to the church. 7 p.m. Joann arrives a few minutes late to St. Paul's Catholic Church prayer service, located in Grosse Pointe Farms. The entrance of the church faces the lakeside, but is actually the back of the church. When Joann arrived, she was the last one in and the first one out, according to eyewitnesses. Between 7:15 and 7:20, church witnesses saw Joann leave out the lakeside doors. At the time, her vehicle was parked to the right of the church if you were standing from the lakeside. At 7:20, witnesses in the church recall hearing a car alarm going off, lasting roughly 10 seconds, and then stopping. The witness who heard the car alarm while inside the church noticed but did not think anything of it since it ended quickly after 10 seconds. Another witness leaving the church, pushing her handicapped father outside. They would then get into her coupe-style car. The witness put her dad in the passenger seat, then sat herself in the driver's seat. During her passing, the witness attempted to check into the SUV Lexus, but was unable to due to the difference in height between the vehicles. 7:25 p.m., the last witness leaves the church. While leaving the church, the witness states no SUV Lexus is at the church. Only notices a black van parked 3 spots ahead of where Joann's car had originally been parked, but is no longer there. At 8:58 p.m., Lieutenant Andrew Rogers states in his recorded deposition that he ran a lien on a silver SUV Lexus parked in the St. Paul Catholic Church parking lot. Deposition transcripts have been supplied to me through the family. Roger quotes in his deposition hearing, quote, "Nothing looked out of the ordinary other than it didn't come back stolen or reported some type of crime. So I continued on my patrol and went westbound on Lakeshore." End quote. Remember, it was 8:58 that Lieutenant Rogers ran that lien on the vehicle.
So once the cop shows up at the house, we're like, what the hell is going on? Like, instantly, as soon as he says, is your mom missing? We found her car in the church parking lot. My sister hears it from afar and says, wait, did he just say your mom's car? And as soon as, that happened, it's just the entire situation. Is your mom missing? It's been 2 hours.
You heard that right. Police arrive at the Matuk residence at 9:24 p.m. regarding her car that was parked in the church parking lot, and they believe that she is missing. Only 2 hours and 24 minutes after arriving to the church, the police believe she is missing. Joann was never reported missing by family or friends that evening because she wasn't missing. What police failed to tell you is this. They ran a second lien on Joann's vehicle that was parked at St. Paul's Catholic Church after they had already contacted the family that she was missing. I know this is confusing, so let me break this down for you. 8:58 p.m., the first lien is ran and deemed no action. The second lien was ran at 9:53 p.m. by Officer Colombo of Grosse Pointe Farms, 19 minutes after an officer had already arrived at the home to inform the family that Joann was missing. How is it possible that Joann is reported missing when the first officer who ran the lien at 8:58 deemed no action on his report, and a police officer had already arrived at the family's residence at 9:24? From there, Grosse Pointe Police contacted the U.S. Coast Guard. From 9:30 to 9:45, you can see on Kelly and Michelle's phone records frantically calling Joann, friends, and family, trying to find out her whereabouts. It would be 9:38 p.m. that the U.S. Coast Guard is launched. At 9:51, the U.S. Coast Guard is officially on scene. How would it be possible for a lien to be ran, but the U.S. Coast Guard is already notified of a missing person? The second lien that was ran, that was the lien that had triggered all of the events of a missing persons case, including an official going to Joann's home. On top of it, the Lexus, the SUV that Joann was driving, was not even registered under Joann. It was registered to her daughter, Michelle. how Grosse Pointe Farms concluded Joann was missing when they would have had no idea she was the one driving the vehicle unless they previously had insight. I think it's best if I share with you the deposition from Officer Colombo. He was the one who ran the second lien at 9:53. During the deposition, Officer Colombo is asked, "What action did you take after you ran this lien?" "Apparently, what you did was you ran a lien on the license plate." "True." Colombo answers, "That is correct." Question asked, "And you found the owner was Michelle Romain, and you ran a lien check on her license number?" Answered by Colombo, "At the bottom of the screen of the MDC, that's where the license number comes from. That's why you have a lien query. Directly after the plate was run, a driver's license number associated with that vehicle is run." The question asked is that a separate do you have to ... Answer by Colombo, "No." Question asked, run that separately or is it automatic? The answer by Colombo is, it's on the exact same page as the license plate. The question asked, so just to make sure I understand this, at 9:53 you run your lien check. What do you do next? Colombo answered, I illuminated the interior of the vehicle, and after illuminating it with the spotlight of my patrol car, and after doing that, I got out and I approached the Lexus to verify whether or not anybody was seated or lying down inside of the vehicle. Question asked, what did you do next? Colombo answered, I looked around on the property of St. Paul and directly behind me in the property of Grosse Pointe Academy. Question asked, and what would you have observed at that point? Colombo answered, nothing. Question asked, what did you do next? Colombo answered, looked directly to my left and I was facing the driver's door of the Lexus, and in a line with the vehicle across Lakeshore Drive, I saw imprints in the snow in the embankment. Question asked, how far away from the vehicle were those footprints? Colombo answered, 75 feet. The vehicle was parked on the north side of Lakeshore Drive. The footprints start on the south side of Lakeshore Drive. Question, did you measure or are you estimating? Colombo answered, estimating. Question asked, do you know if anybody measured? Answer, I do not. Question asked, so you were able to observe the footprints from where you were standing next to the vehicle? Colombo answered, correct. Question asked, how were you able to observe them from that distance at that time of night? Question answered by Colombo, I had the headlights on my vehicle, the spotlight on my vehicle, both facing south towards the curb where the footprints exited. My handheld flashlight and the ambient light because of the snow-covered ground. Question asked, so at this point your vehicle was parked next to this Lexus and pointed in the same direction? Answer by Colombo, no, parked behind it and pointed in the same direction of the Lexus. Question asked, and with the lights on, you were able to see down the street to the grass area or where the snow was and where the footprints were, correct? Colombo answered, correct. Question asked, were there any footprints leading from the vehicle to that embankment? Answer, no. Question asked, just so that we are very clear about this, you saw the footprints by the embankment when you were physically standing next to where the vehicle was, correct? Colombo answers, that's correct. Question asked, and after you saw the footprints, what did you do? Officer Colombo answers, I walked across Lakeshore Drive to the curbside where I saw the imprints in the snow and I could see the footprints in the snow leading down towards the second embankment at the water's edge. Question, did you take pictures of the footprints? Answer by Colombo, no. Question, at any point? Answer, never. Question, do you know if anybody did take pictures? Answer, I do not know that. Question, what did you do after you observed the footprints? Answer, I looked to the east and to the west to see if there were any tracks coming back from the water's edge. Question, and what did you see? Answer, nothing. Fresh snow. Question, what did you do next? Answer, I could observe that the lake side of the embankment was open water. There was no ice leading directly from the embankment edge or the seawall edge out into the lake, and I immediately notified my supervisor, Lieutenant Rogers. Question, what happened next? Answer, within 2 minutes he arrived at my location. I explained to him what I had and what I believed I had. Question, and what did you tell him that you believed you had? Answer, I believe that there was somebody in the water. Question, and did you show him the footprints? Answer, yes, I did. And did either of you walk over those footprints? Answer, no. Question, what happened next? Answer, after explaining to Lieutenant Rogers that I believe there was somebody in the water, he agreed with me, and he felt the same under the circumstances, at which time we decided that the dive team would be activated. Question, that the what? Answer, the dive team would be activated. Question, at this point, did you or Rogers take any pictures of these footprints? Answer, I did not take any pictures. Question, what were you able to observe with the footprints? What did it look like? Answer, the footprints they were smaller in stature. They were from heel to toe. They were shorter. The ball of the footprint appeared to be pointed and the heel appeared to be similar to an impression made by a high heel, like a stiletto. Question, were there ice that was broken by the embankment? Answer, not that I recall. Question, was there any possible point of entry into the water? Answer, yes. Question, and what was the water, frozen or was it ice? Was it water? Answer, the lake. It was open water extending out several hundred feet away from the embankment at that point. Question, so at this point, it's you and Rogers, correct? Answer, that's correct. From right there, you heard the deposition Colombo took place in. In his own words, he told you the timeline of events that occurred under oath and on the record. Did you catch what he said? Footprints in fresh snow. It's 136 feet from where Joann's car was parked to the point of entry into the water. Let's not forget that Colombo's car was parked directly behind Joann's vehicle. The images from that night show no snow was actually on the pavement. The pavement was wet, but no snow was stuck to it. So from 136 feet away, Officer Colombo sees footprints at the water's edge in the dead of night. Let's remember, previously, Michelle and Kelly have had an officer come to their door to inform them that their mom is missing. Here's Michelle talking further about what the officer said and how they found out she was missing.
You're like, okay, what made you look over there? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So goes over there, says he sees footprints and, something going on over there. So then automatically assumes that car is associated with those footprints across the street.
Police records will tell you that Officer Fisher was the one who came and spoke to them at the home. Michelle and Kelly say Officer Fisher is not the person that they spoke with. We're going to dive further into this in a bit. But for now, the daughters have never been able to put a name to the face that they saw that evening at their house, telling them that their mom is missing. But for now, Joann's daughters both recall being caught off guard at the car being linked back to Joann. They took mental note of the odd connection because the car is in Michelle's name, not Joann's, as you heard them say. From there, police informed them to stay home, and they have already begun searches at the church, less than 3 hours after Joann was inside the church at a prayer service. Against officers' instructions, the kids head to St. Paul Catholic Church to see what is actually going on. They are adamant something is not right with this story. Panic, worry, and confusion begin to set in. It looks like scenes out of a movie. When they arrived at the church, they noticed police tape, cop cars, helicopters, lights in the sky, dive teams already in the water searching for Joann. There is no logic to this crime scene, and our kids can't believe what they are hearing. Since there is no tracks leading from the Lexus to the water's edge, and she's only been, in quotes, missing for a few hours, they are unsure how officers have come to this conclusion, that Joann is in the water. More red flags are flying for Michelle and Kelly. On top of the no tracks leading from the Lexus to the water, Joann would have had to cross one lane of traffic, a median, and another lane of traffic before reaching the snowy footprints that Officer Colombo originally noticed. Just beyond the snow footprints is a steep slope covered with ice and snow. Broken concrete and rebar would have made it difficult for a small-statured, 55-year-old Joann to make it down in high-heeled boots without falling. The thought of walking into the lake without seeing some sort of torn clothing seemed highly unlikely. Upon seeing the footprints, Joann's children realize that they are certainly not Joann's. Not because of the shock, but because they look nothing like the footprints of a small female wearing high-heeled boots. Police begin taping off the scene as officers, dive team officials, investigators begin walking in the same area as the footprints. Images of the footprints are available, but what police failed to do was provide an image with a scale for measurement purposes. How can they confirm that these were Joann's shoes without knowing the true size of the print that was left behind? In addition to the lack of measurements done, they failed to complete 90-degree angle images, and very few images were actually taken and provided showing these prints in the snow. I will make sure to post these images on our Instagram page for you to take a look at. Several individuals outside of the police officers have questioned police practices at this time. Taking 90-degree angle photos of footprints is routine to assist in identifying the shoes. From the water's edge, we're going to turn around, walk over one lane of traffic, a median, another lane of traffic, and up the driveway near the church to where Joann's car is parked. Officers have now taped off the locked Lexus in the parking lot of St. Paul's Catholic Church. Looking inside, officers and family see a purse sitting on the passenger side seat. They attempt to gain entry. Again, doors are locked. Michelle and Kelly are standing nearby them, and they suggest calling a local tow truck to help assist them in opening up the vehicle. Police officers agree. Prior to the tow truck arriving, no one was able to gain access to the vehicle. Upon opening the Lexus, the purse that was on the passenger side seat was not handled with gloves. The interior of the vehicle was not preserved immediately to help maintain any DNA evidence that could have been collected. Police officers hand the purse to the family, barehanded. Michelle recalls asking the officers, "What is this?" It would be a large tear on the shoulder strap of Joann's purse that caught the family's attention immediately. The bag had been purchased less than 6 weeks ago and was not damaged before today. The lien on the car, the footprints, finding the vehicle, officers arriving at the house, the tear in the purse, all of the red flags get the family's attention. Something is not right here. The search for Joann continued until 1:30 a.m. From there, the Lexus was towed to the official's office to further conduct DNA testing. In response to the family's pleas for land searches, Grosse Pointe Farms refused to conduct any land searches and would only conduct water searches. Dogs were not even permitted to search for Joann's scent on land the night that she supposedly went missing. It would be then, at 2 a.m., that Grosse Pointe Farms ended the water search, which would officially be January 13th, 2010. Officers and investigators told the family they would see them at 10:30 a.m. the following day to continue their search. The following day, the family is informed that Grosse Pointe Farms, where the church is located and where Joann was last seen, will be transferring the case to Grosse Pointe Woods, where Joann lives. No further land, water, or air investigation would be completed by Grosse Pointe Woods from this point forward, nor would any other investigation be completed by Grosse Pointe Farms. Frustrated and concerned, Joann's children looked to hiring their own team of divers to help search for Joann. The family turned to find their own resources in the search for Joann. First on their list was Bill Robinette, director of Midwest Technical Recovery and a former Detroit police officer. For the next few weekends, Bill and 15 volunteers trained in dive recovery search for Joann and any signs of her. Here's my interview with Bill and his memory of the search for Joann.
Very tight search of the bottom. So we were doing various searches that it's called grids. We were running grid lines, and so we made sure we didn't miss anything. Even if we didn't find the body, we might find clothing or something that she would have dropped. We didn't, but after the first couple of days, we were thinking, she's not in here. We would have found her. If she was on the bottom, we would have definitely found her.
Yeah. And current-wise, so where she entered in the water, how far out did you guys search?
We searched from the shoreline out about 300 yards.
Wow.
And that took several days, but we covered it. Then we came back, started all over again.
I found Bill Robinette's interview to be one of the most informative and thorough I have ever done. We spoke for approximately 2 hours that evening about his past experiences as a Detroit police officer and the 24 years he has spent leading a professional dive recovery team. Bill's interview and what he says about water and air currents will be a key focus of this season. In addition, why bodies float and sink, how currents run, and how likely someone is to commit suicide by drowning. We will get to that, I promise. It was clear that Joann's body was not there, just as Joann's kids and Bill the diver had suspected, as well as many others. Due to low currents, her body could not travel much that day. She would have been right nearby had Joann gone into the water in that area that day. It's almost as if she had vanished right into thin air. The children of Joann are aware that foul play has taken place, and they are wondering why the police have transferred the case from Grosse Pointe Farms, where she went missing, to Grosse Pointe Woods, where she lives. The police have failed to continue a thorough ground, air, and water search after that first initial night that Joann went missing. Putting the pieces together, the family began to question the motives of those around them. Joann had been frightened just weeks before she disappeared, so the family began to investigate the one person Joann had voiced concerns about, Tim Matuk. You recall Tim Matuk from the beginning of the episode, right? Her cousin who she had received a nasty phone call from just weeks before she went missing. The same cousin she had tried to talk to her brother, Bill Matuk, about at the store that he owned. The same cousin who was at the time working with the Michigan State Narcotics team. The same cousin that she told her kids about. If something happens to me, look to Tim. I am ending episode 1 with a phone call that I need to tell you about. I've waited until now because I didn't want you to be focusing on this call the entire episode. Episode 2 will begin with a phone call between Tim Matuk and Ed Milam. This is the first time you will be hearing the name Ed Milam. This is new evidence that has never been reported on until now. A phone call has been linked between Tim Matuk and Ed Milam, talking just minutes before Joann walks out of the church and goes missing. You are probably wondering how this gentleman plays into all of this. What if I told you that Ed Milam used to be a Pepsi delivery driver in the Metro Detroit area? What if I also told you that the phone calls between Tim Matuk and Ed Milam had only began just a few weeks before Joann would go missing? We're drawing our next connection. What if Ed Milam, the Pepsi driver from Metro Detroit, possibly may have delivered at Woods Wholesale Wine Store owned by Bill Matuk, Joann's brother? Aside from that, what would make a Pepsi delivery driver be in contact with Tim Matuk? See the connections that I'm making here? What if I told you that Michelle, Kelly, and their private investigator, Scott Lewis, would drive to mid-Michigan to question Ed Milam, who is no longer a delivery driver, but is now a pastor? For now, I will leave you with this.
Scott Lewis.
Hey Scott, this is Ed Milam.
Hey Ed, how you doing?
Good. I just wanted to, as I started thinking, I just wanted to make sure, that this isn't something I need to worry about. That there's somebody out there, that I need to concern myself with.
In what way? I mean, what do you mean concern yourself
Well,
with?
I mean, I've got 3 kids. I don't want this to be some kind of where somebody's coming after me.
Oh no, I don't see that. I just, I mean, why would they come after you for a civil lawsuit?
I don't know, but I've never had anybody come to me and ask questions like that before. So
Yeah. Well,
I just, is somebody stolen my identity? Is somebody using my information to do nefarious things?
well, here's the thing that I can't figure out, and the attorneys can subpoena these phone records and find out for sure who had these, but I've been doing this for a few years, and before that in television for many years, using these databases, and they're not perfect, but in your case, this number seems to track with you from 2010 through 2011, and then the 517 number that you gave me picks up. So We're just trying to find out who Tim Matuk was talking to at this particular time. In January of 2010, there was this 18-minute phone call, and we're trying to find out who he was talking to. And when I do my researches in the databases, which are, maybe one can be wrong, but I got 3 of them, and all say that you had that number in 2010. That's why I came to see you. We just want to know who he was talking to and for what reason.
Yeah, well, he wasn't talking to me.
So
I don't know him.
You've seriously never heard of Tim Matuk?
I have no idea who that is.
Okay.
No idea.
Ever spend any time in the Detroit area?
Years ago when I was with Pepsi, but that was only delivering product and equipment.
Oh, really?
But I don't know who Tim Matuk is.
Okay.